Two Chinese twins fled into a blizzard to escape slavery, only to collapse dying in the snow. When a lone cowboy found them frozen and barely breathing, he faced an impossible choice: save two fugitives and become an outlaw himself, or let the frontier claim two more forgotten souls. But mercy on the American plains always comes with a price, and soon three riders wearing badges would arrive demanding answers. What happened next would force strangers to become family, shatter the bond between sisters, and prove that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can offer someone is hope. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The wind screamed across the Wyoming plains like something alive and vengeful, driving snow so thick that Lian couldn't see her own hands stretched before her face. Beside her, identical in every way except for the small scar above Mei Lin's left eyebrow, her sister stumbled and nearly went down. "Keep moving!" Lian gasped, though her own legs felt like iron weights. "We can't stop." "I know." Mei Lin's voice was barely audible over the howling storm. "But, Lian, I can't feel my feet anymore." They shouldn't have run. They should have stayed at the railroad camp, kept their heads down, continued the brutal work of cooking and washing for 40 men who looked through them like they were ghosts. 5 years of that life had taught them survival meant invisibility. But survival and slavery weren't the same thing. The memory of what they'd overheard that morning burned hotter than the cold gnawing at their bones. Foreman Tucker, drunk on whiskey at noon, laughing with the camp boss about the Chinese girls and how much a brothel owner in Laramie would pay for a matched set. "Like buying 2 fillies," Tucker had said, "broken in already from camp work. Won't give no trouble." The other man's response had sealed their fate. "I'll have the wagon ready Friday." Friday was tomorrow, so they'd waited until the afternoon shift change when the camp descended into its usual chaos of men rotating between track work and mess hall. They'd taken nothing but the clothes on their backs and the small leather pouch Mei Lin wore around her neck, the only thing they had left from their mother. 3 hours ago, the camp had been visible behind them, smoke rising from the cook fires. 2 hours ago, the snow had started. 1 hour ago, they'd lost any sense of direction. Now they were dying. "Mei Lin." Lian stopped, turned, grabbed her sister's arms. Even through their thin jackets, meant for California summers, not Wyoming winters, she could feel Mei Lin shaking. "Listen to me. We stay together. Always together." "Always together," Mei Lin echoed. It was what they'd promised each other the day their mother sold them to the ship captain in Guangzhou. They were 14 then. They were 19 now, and that promise had kept them alive through things that should have killed them both. They pushed forward into the white nothing. Lian didn't know how much farther they walked. Time lost meaning when every breath felt like inhaling knives and every step might be your last. The world contracted to just the effort of moving, the sensation of Mei Lin's hand gripped in hers, the wind trying to tear them apart. When Mei Lin fell, Lian went down with her. "Get up," Lian said, pulling at her sister. "Mei Lin, get up." "I can't." Mei Lin's eyes were closing. "I'm sorry. I can't." "No." Lian shook her hard. "No, you don't get to quit. We didn't come this far to die in the snow like animals." "We came this far to be free," Mei Lin whispered. "Maybe this is what free looks like." "That's not free. That's just dead." But even as she said it, Lian felt her own strength failing. The cold was inside her now, settling into her chest like heavy stones. Her fingers wouldn't close properly. Her thoughts were becoming slow and thick. She pulled Mei Lin close, wrapping her arms around her sister the way they used to sleep back in Guangzhou, when they were small enough to fit together in one narrow bed. Back when the world was just their mother's small room above the tea shop, before hunger and desperation had changed everything. "I'm sorry," Lian said into Mei Lin's hair. "I'm sorry I said we should run." "I wanted to run too," Mei Lin said. "Better this than—" She didn't finish. She didn't need to. The snow built up around them, covering their legs, their backs, their shoulders. Lian thought about their mother, wondered if she was still alive, if she ever thought about the daughters she'd sold. Probably not. Probably she'd taken the money and tried to forget. That was the last coherent thought she had before the darkness started closing in. She didn't hear the hoofbeats at first. When she did, she thought it might be death itself, come to collect them. The sound was rhythmic, steady, cutting through the storm's chaos. A horse. A rider. Tucker. The thought pierced through her fading consciousness like a spike of ice. He'd come after them. They'd die anyway, just slower, in worse ways. The hoofbeats stopped. Leanne tried to open her eyes, but her lashes were frozen together. She felt rather than saw someone dismount, heard boots crunching in the snow, coming closer. Jesus Christ, a man's voice said. Not Tucker's voice, someone else. Strong hands touched her shoulder, and Leanne used the last of her strength to pull Mei Lin tighter against her chest. Please, she managed through frozen lips. Don't kill us. There was a pause. Then the voice again, closer now, gentler. I'm not going to kill you. But if I don't get you out of this storm right now, you're both dead anyway. Can you stand? Leanne couldn't answer, couldn't move. The darkness was pulling her down. She felt herself being lifted, heard Mei Lin's small cry of protest or pain, then nothing. The first thing Leanne became aware of was warmth. Not the burning pain of frostbite thawing, though that would come later, but gentle, persistent warmth surrounding her. The second thing was softness beneath her. The third was the smell of wood smoke and coffee. She forced her eyes open. She was lying on a narrow bed covered in rough wool blankets. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, flames crackling behind an iron grate. The room was small, just one main space with a cooking area, a table, 2 chairs, and the bed she was in. Furs and supplies hung from the rafters. A single window showed darkness outside. Mei Lin. The name came out as a croak. Here. Her sister's voice weak but alive. Leanne turned her head. Even that small movement took effort, and saw Mei Lin in a second bed against the opposite wall. Her sister's face was pale, her lips still tinged blue, but her eyes were open. Where are we? Leanne asked. Safe, I think. Mei Lin's gaze shifted to something behind Leanne. He's been taking care of us. Leanne tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through her hands and feet as circulation returned to frozen extremities. She bit back a cry. Easy. The same voice from the storm. You're going to hurt for a while. Frostbite takes time to heal. He moved into her field of vision, and Leanne's first thought was that he looked nothing like the railroad men. He was tall but not heavy, built lean like he spent his days working rather than drinking. His face was weathered, sun-dark, with deep lines around his eyes and a thick beard going gray at the edges. He might have been 35 or 50. The frontier aged men in ways that made guessing impossible. But it was his eyes that caught her attention. They were cautious, yes, and tired, but not cruel. Not hungry. Still, Leanne had learned that appearances meant nothing. Who are you? She asked. What do you want? Name's Caleb Hartley. This is my cabin. He gestured to the room. I was tracking elk when I found you two in the snow. Figured leaving you there would be the same as murder, so I brought you back. Why? Mei Lin asked. Why help us? Caleb's expression didn't change. Because you were dying. People die all the time, Leanne said. White people don't usually care when they look like us. Something flickered across his face. Not anger, but something sadder. No, I suppose they don't. He moved to the fireplace, poured something from a pot into 2 tin cups. When he brought them over, Leanne tensed, but he simply set them on the small table beside her bed and stepped back. Broth, he said. Beef and salt. It'll help. He did the same for Mei Lin, then retreated to the far side of the room, giving them space. Leanne watched him carefully as she reached for the cup. Her fingers were clumsy, wrapped in bandages, but she managed to lift it. The broth was hot and rich and the most delicious thing she'd tasted in 5 years. She had to force herself not to gulp it down. How long have we been here? She asked. Day and a half, Caleb said. Storm's still going. Should break by tomorrow. And then? Then you tell me where you need to go, and I'll help you get there. Leanne and Mei Lin exchanged glances. It was the same look they'd perfected over years of shared survival, an entire conversation happening in the space between heartbeats. Can we trust him? Leanne's eyes asked. Do we have a choice? Mei Lin's replied. We don't have anywhere to go, Leanne said finally. That's why we were in the storm. Caleb nodded slowly, like this didn't surprise him. You running from something? Someone, Mei Lin said quietly. The railroad camp. They were going to sell us. To who? Does it matter? Leon's voice came out harder than she intended. Men buy women like us all the time out here. We're Chinese, we're workers, we're property. Not to me, you're not. Caleb's tone was flat, factual. Nobody's property to me. Then what are we? Leon demanded. You save us, feed us, wrap our frostbite. What's the price? Because there's always a price. For the first time, something like anger touched Caleb's features, but it wasn't directed at them. The price is you heal up and then make your own choice about what comes next. That's it. Why should we believe you? Because if I wanted to hurt you, I could have done it already while you were unconscious. He stood, walked to the door, pulled on a heavy coat. I'm going to check the horses and bring in more wood. There's more broth in the pot if you want it. Try to sleep. He left, cold air rushing in before the door closed behind him. In the silence that followed, Leon looked at her sister. What do you think? I think we were dead in the snow, Maylin said. And now we're not. Everything else is tomorrow's problem. You always were the optimistic one. One of us had to be. Leon smiled despite everything. It was an old argument, worn comfortable as old shoes. She finished her broth, feeling strength slowly returning to her body. Her feet still hurt, a deep, throbbing ache that meant the frostbite hadn't gone too deep, but she could wiggle her toes. That was something. When Caleb returned, arms loaded with split wood, he found both sisters sitting up in their beds. He said nothing, just stacked the wood by the fireplace and hung his coat. Tell me about the railroad camp, he said as he added logs to the fire. How'd you end up there? Leon hesitated. Maylin spoke first. We came from San Francisco, worked in a laundry there for 3 years after we got off the boat. The owner sold the business, and the new man. She paused. He wasn't kind, so we left. Heard the railroad was hiring cooks and washerwomen. Thought it might be better. Was it? For a while, Leon said. The work was hard but honest. We got paid. Not much, but enough. We kept to ourselves. Didn't cause trouble. What changed? The foreman. Leon's hands tightened on her cup. Tucker. He'd been watching us, making comments. We ignored it. But then we heard him talking about selling us to a brothel in Laramie. He'd already made the deal. Caleb's jaw tightened. So you ran? We ran, Maylin confirmed. Stupid, probably. We don't know this country, don't know how to survive out here. But we knew what would happen if we stayed. Not stupid, Caleb said. Brave. Brave and stupid aren't mutually exclusive, Leon said. That got a small smile from him. No, they're not. He moved to the stove, began preparing something. Leon watched him work, noted the economy of his movements, the way he handled tools and ingredients with practiced ease. A man who'd been taking care of himself for a long time. You live here alone? She asked. Mostly. Got a small herd of horses I'm building up. Sell them to ranchers and the army when I can. It's not much, but it's mine. No wife? The question came from Maylin, and Leon shot her a look. Too personal, too soon. But Caleb didn't seem offended. Had one. She died 6 years back. Fever took her and our baby girl both. The simple way he said it made it worse somehow, like the pain had gone so deep he'd learned to carry it quiet. I'm sorry, Maylin said softly. Long time ago now. He turned back to the stove. I'm making beans and cornbread. It's plain food, but it'll keep you strong while you heal. They ate in silence as the storm continued to rage outside. Leon found herself studying Caleb when he wasn't looking, the way his hands shook slightly as he ate, like he wasn't quite used to having people at his table, the way his eyes kept drifting to the empty chairs as if expecting ghosts. After dinner, he cleaned the dishes while the sisters sat by the fire. Leon's feet were starting to hurt worse as the nerves woke up, and she couldn't hide the grimace. Pain's good, Caleb said, noticing. Means you're not going to lose them. But it's going to be bad for a few days. I've got willow bark tea that'll help. He prepared the tea, brought it to them. Leon took hers reluctantly, still not entirely trusting despite the evidence of his kindness. Why do you live all the way out here? She asked. Alone? Caleb settled into one of the chairs, stretched his long legs toward the fire. After Mary and Emma died, I couldn't stay in town. Too many memories, too many people telling me it was heaven's plan or some such nonsense. He stared into the flames. Out here, nobody bothers you. Nobody asks questions you don't want to answer. A man can just exist without having to explain himself. Until you find 2 Chinese women dying in the snow, Mei Lin said. Yeah, until that. Do you regret it? Lian asked. Saving us? Caleb looked at her directly. Do I look like a man who regrets doing the right thing? I don't know what you look like, Lian said honestly. I don't know white men who do the right thing just because it's right. Then you haven't known the right white men. Maybe. Lian sipped her tea, feeling the willow bark's bitterness on her tongue. Or maybe you're the exception. Maybe I'm just a man who knows what it's like to need help and not get it. The words hung in the air between them. Outside, the wind howled like wolves, but inside the cabin it was warm and the firelight made shadows dance on the log walls. The storm will break tomorrow, Caleb said eventually. When it does, you'll need to decide what you want to do. You can't go back to the railroad. Tucker will be looking for you. Going to Laramie on your own is suicide, but there are other options. Like what? Mei Lin asked. There's a settlement about 2 days' ride west. Got a marshal who's mostly honest and a small Chinese community. I could take you there, help you get situated. And then? Lian asked. And then you're on your own. I can't protect you forever. We don't need protection, Lian said sharply. We need opportunity. Caleb nodded slowly. Fair enough. But opportunity is hard to come by out here for anyone, let alone 2 Chinese women with no papers and no connections. We've survived worse. I don't doubt it. He stood, stretched. I'm going to bed down in the barn tonight. Give you 2 some privacy. There's a bar for the door. Use it. If you need anything, there's a bell by the window. Ring it and I'll come. You're sleeping in the barn? Mei Lin frowned. In this storm? I've got good blankets and the horses keep it warm enough. I've slept in worse places. He pulled on his coat. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out the next step. After he left, Lian immediately got up, wincing at the pain in her feet, and barred the door. Do you believe him? Mei Lin asked. About helping us? I don't know. Lian returned to her bed. But I believe he won't hurt us tonight. That's enough for now. He's sad, Mei Lin said quietly. Did you see his eyes? He looks like someone who's forgotten how to be happy. Most people out here look like that. Not like him. He looks like he's punishing himself for something. Lian studied her sister. Don't. Don't what? Don't start caring. We can't afford it. Mei Lin turned away. I'm not caring. I'm just observing. Observing leads to caring. Caring leads to weakness. We can't be weak, Mei Lin. We were weak enough to almost die in a storm. That's different. That was survival. This is... Lian struggled for words. This is dangerous in another way. You mean trusting him? I mean trusting anyone. Lian lay back on the bed. We only have each other. That's all we've ever had. The moment we forget that, we're lost. Mei Lin didn't answer, but Lian could feel her sister's disagreement in the silence. It was an old argument between them. Lian's hardness against Mei Lin's softness, caution against hope. The storm raged through the night. Lian slept fitfully, waking often to check that the door was still barred, that Mei Lin was still breathing, that this wasn't some elaborate trap waiting to spring. But morning came quiet. The wind had died. Through the small window, Lian could see pale sunlight breaking through clouds, illuminating a world transformed into white silence. She got up carefully, testing her feet. The pain had lessened to a dull throb. Mei Lin stirred in her bed. Morning, her sister murmured. Storm's over. They waited, but Caleb didn't immediately return. An hour passed, then another. Maybe he left, Mei Lin said. Maybe. But Lian didn't believe it. Finally, hoofbeats approached. Lian tensed until she heard Caleb's voice calling out, It's me. I'm coming in. She unbarred the door. Caleb entered carrying a haunch of frozen elk meat. His face was red from the cold, but his eyes were bright. Figured you'd be hungry, he said. Real food, not just broth and beans. He set about preparing a proper breakfast. Elk steaks, fried potatoes, and coffee, so strong it could wake the dead. The sisters watched him work, still uncertain, still wary. I've been thinking about your situation, Caleb said as he cooked. About what comes next. And, Lian asked, The settlement's still your best option for safety, but if you're serious about wanting opportunity, he paused. I could use help with the horses. The sisters exchanged glances. What kind of help? Mei-Lin asked. Feeding, grooming, training. It's hard work and I can't pay much. Room, board, and a small wage. But it'd be honest work. Legal. Safe. Until when? Lian asked. Until Tucker comes looking? Tucker doesn't know where I live. Most people don't. I keep to myself, remember? But if he finds out, we deal with it then. Caleb plated the food, brought it to the table. Look, I'm not saying it's perfect, but it buys you time to figure out your next move, gives you a chance to heal up, earn some money, learn some skills that might help you wherever you end up. Why would you do this? Lian demanded. You don't know us. We could be thieves, liars, anything. Could be, Caleb agreed, but I don't think you are. And I know what it's like to need a second chance. This isn't charity, Lian said firmly. If we agree, we work. We earn our keep. Wouldn't have it any other way. The sisters ate in silence, thinking. The food was simple but cooked with care, and Lian found herself eating more than she had in days. Finally, Mei-Lin spoke. How long would this arrangement last? However long you need it to, Caleb said. Spring comes in about 2 months. By then the passes will be clear, and you can head wherever you want, California, Colorado, north to Montana. Your choice. And if we stay longer? Then you stay longer. I'm not going to force you out. Lian set down her fork. We need to talk, alone. Caleb nodded, stood. I'll be in the barn. After he left, the sisters looked at each other. What do you think? Mei-Lin asked. I think it sounds too good to be true. But everything good sounds too good to be true when you've lived like we have. Lian couldn't argue with that. You trust him. I don't know him well enough to trust him, Mei-Lin said. But I believe he's honest. I believe he means what he says. Belief isn't enough. Then what is? Lian, we're out of options. We can't go back. We can't go forward alone. This gives us time. Time for what? Time to become something other than fugitives. Time to learn. Time to... Mei-Lin paused. Time to rest, Lian. When was the last time we weren't running or hiding or working ourselves to death? Lian wanted to argue, but couldn't find the words. Her sister was right. They'd been surviving so long they'd forgotten what it meant to actually live. 2 months, she said finally. We stay 2 months. We work hard. We save every penny. And when spring comes, we leave. Together. Together, Mei-Lin agreed. And we don't get attached. We don't let our guard down. We don't forget who we are or what we've learned. I won't forget. Lian studied her sister's face, seeing her own features reflected back. Same eyes, same mouth, same small nose their mother used to say came from their grandmother. But where Lian had hardened over the years, Mei-Lin had somehow kept a softness that 5 years of American brutality hadn't quite crushed. It worried her sometimes, that softness, made her feel like she had to be hard enough for both of them. Okay, Lian said. Let's tell him yes. They found Caleb in the barn, working with a young mare. The space was larger than Lian expected, with 6 stalls and room for more. The horses were healthy-looking, well-fed despite the harsh winter. We'll stay, Lian announced. 2 months. Then we reassess. Caleb nodded. Fair enough. We'll start easy. You're both still recovering, but I'll show you the routine, teach you what you need to know. He was true to his word. Over the next week, as their frostbite healed and strength returned, he taught them everything about horse care with patient thoroughness. He showed them how to read a horse's mood from the position of its ears, how to check hooves for stones, how to measure feed and mix supplements. The work was physical but satisfying in a way the railroad camp had never been. There was a rhythm to it, morning feeding, midday grooming, evening hay and water. The horses responded to gentle handling, and Lian found unexpected peace in the simple repetition of care. Mei-Lin took to it faster, her natural gentleness making her a favorite with the more nervous animals. Lian approached it more practically, learning the mechanics of horse management with the same focused determination she applied to everything. Caleb watched them work but didn't hover. He answered questions, corrected mistakes, but mostly let them figure things out. In the evenings, they ate together at the cabin's small table, conversation gradually replacing silence. "Where did you learn horses?" Mei Lin asked one night. "Grew up on a ranch in Texas," Caleb said. "My father raised cattle, but I always preferred horses. When I came north, I decided to make a go of it on my own." "Why Wyoming?" "Space, quiet. A man can think out here without the world pressing in on all sides." "Don't you get lonely?" The question came from Mei Lin, and Lian kicked her under the table. But Caleb just smiled slightly. "Sometimes, but lonely's different from alone. Alone is a choice. Lonely is what happens when you're surrounded by people who don't see you." Lian understood that more than she wanted to admit. 2 weeks became 3. The sisters settled into a routine, their bodies growing stronger, their hands developing calluses. Caleb paid them as promised, not much, but honestly, and they saved every coin. Then, on a clear February morning, 3 riders appeared on the horizon. Lian spotted them first. She was outside hanging laundry, something Caleb had rigged a line for, when she saw the distant shapes moving across the snow. "Mei Lin," she called, trying to keep her voice calm. "Go get Caleb. Tell him we have company." Her sister appeared in the barn doorway, followed immediately by Caleb. He shaded his eyes, studying the approaching riders. "Into the barn," he said quietly. "Up into the loft. Stay quiet no matter what you hear." "Who are they?" Lian asked, though she already knew, already felt it in her bones. "Don't know yet, but better safe." The sisters ran for the barn, climbing the ladder to the loft where hay was stored. They buried themselves deep, creating a small space where they could see down through cracks in the floorboards but couldn't be seen. Caleb walked out to meet the riders, his movements casual, unhurried. The 3 men rode up and stopped 20 feet from the cabin. 2 wore deputy badges. The third, older and harder looking, had a marshal's star pinned to his coat. "Help you, gentlemen?" Caleb asked. The marshal leaned forward in his saddle. "Name's Wade. Looking for 2 Chinese women, railroad workers. Ran off from a camp east of here about 3 weeks back. You seen anyone matching that description?" From her hiding place, Lian felt Mei Lin's hand find hers and squeeze tight. "No," Caleb said. His voice was steady, bored almost. "Haven't seen anyone. Storm was too bad for traveling." "Storm's been over more than 2 weeks," one of the deputies said. "True enough, but I haven't been anywhere that I'd see other folks. Been snowed in mostly, taking care of my horses." Marshal Wade's eyes narrowed. "Mind if we look around?" "I do, actually." Caleb's tone didn't change, but something in his posture did, a subtle shifting of weight, a readiness. "This is private property. You got a warrant?" "Don't need a warrant to look for fugitives." "They fugitives from the law? Or fugitives from whoever wants to collect the reward you're probably carrying in your pocket?" Wade's jaw tightened. "They're stolen property. Chinese Labor Contract Act means they belong to whoever holds their papers." "Funny thing about that act," Caleb said. "It doesn't actually make people property, it makes contracts. And contracts can be broken, especially ones signed under duress." "You a lawyer now, Hartley?" "No, just a man who knows the difference between law and business." The 2 men stared at each other. In the loft, Lian could barely breathe. Mei Lin was shaking beside her. Finally, Wade straightened. "You see these women, you're obligated to report it. If I see anyone matching that description, I'll make my own decision about what to do." Caleb crossed his arms. "That all, Marshal?" "For now." Wade turned his horse. "But we'll be checking with folks around here. Someone sees something, we'll be back." "You do that." The 3 riders left, but not quickly. They took their time, clearly making a point. Caleb stood watching until they disappeared over the ridge, then turned back to the barn. "They're gone," he called up to the loft. "For now." The sisters climbed down. Mei Lin was crying silently. Lian was rigid with fury. "You lied for us," Lian said. "Why?" "Because they were here to take you back to slavery." Caleb's face was grim. "I don't hold with that, papers or no papers." "They'll come back," Lian said. "You heard him. If anyone reports seeing us, then we'll deal with it." "How?" Lian demanded. "How do we deal with the law?" Caleb was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "There might be a way. It's not perfect. It's not simple. But it could work." "What way?" He looked between them. legal protection. If you were citizens, they couldn't touch you. We can't become citizens, Mei Lin said. The Chinese Exclusion Act. I know about the act, but there are exceptions. Caleb took a breath. Marriage to a citizen grants automatic status. It's legal, documented, and it would make you protected under American law. The words fell like stones into still water. You're suggesting. Lian couldn't finish the sentence. I'm suggesting it as an option, nothing more. A legal arrangement that would keep you safe. A legal arrangement, Lian repeated. Marriage. In name only, if that's what you wanted. I'm not asking for anything except the chance to help. Mei Lin made a small sound. You would do that? Marry a stranger just to protect her? I do it because it's the right thing to do. Caleb's voice was firm. And because I know what it's like to watch people suffer when you have the power to help and don't. Lian felt like the world was tilting sideways. A week ago they were dying in snow. Now a white man was offering marriage as protection. It didn't make sense. Nothing made sense. We need time, she said, to think. Take all the time you need, Caleb said. But they will come back. And when they do, time's something you won't have. He left them in this barn, returned to the cabin. Lian turned to her sister. Mei Lin was staring at the ground, her face unreadable. Don't even think about it, Lian said. Why not? Because marriage means, Lian struggled. It means separation. It means one of us tied to him while the other one stays free? Mei Lin looked up. Is that what you're afraid of? That I'd choose him over you? You promised, always together. I know what I promised. Mei Lin's voice was gentle but firm. But Lian, we can't stay together if we're both dead. And that's where this is heading. You know it is. There has to be another way. Tell me what it is. Tell me one other option that keeps us both alive and safe. Lian had no answer. She wanted to rage against the unfairness of it all, that they'd survived so much only to be trapped by circumstances again, that freedom kept slipping through their fingers no matter how hard they grasped. But rage wouldn't change reality. We don't have to decide now, Mei Lin said softly. Like he said, take time to think. But Lian knew they didn't have time. Not really. The law was hunting them, and the frontier had very few hiding places left. 3 days passed in tense silence. The sisters worked alongside Caleb as usual, but something had shifted in the air between them. Every sound from the ridge made them jump. Every distant rider on the horizon sent them running for the barn. Fear had settled into their bones like the winter cold, and no amount of work could warm it away. Lian watched her sister with growing concern. Mei Lin had always been the hopeful one, the one who believed people could be good despite all evidence to the contrary. But now Lian caught her looking at Caleb when she thought no one was watching, measuring him, studying him, trying to solve some equation that Lian herself couldn't quite see. On the fourth morning, Caleb was in the corral working with a young stallion when the horse suddenly reared, spooked by something neither Lian nor Mei Lin could identify. The animal came down hard, and Caleb tried to step back but wasn't fast enough. The stallion's rear hoof caught him square in the ribs with a sickening crack that carried across the yard. Caleb went down like a tree, cut at the base. Caleb! Mei Lin was running before Lian even processed what had happened. They reached him together. He was conscious but gasping, his face sheet white, one hand pressed to his side. When Lian tried to help him sit up, he groaned and went even paler. Don't move him, Mei Lin said. Her hands were shaking as she gently pulled Caleb's hand away from his ribs. Even through his shirt, they could see the dark bruising already forming. We need to get him inside. It took both of them to help him stand, and the short walk to the cabin left him barely conscious. They got him onto his bed. He'd been sleeping in the barn since they'd arrived, but they weren't about to carry him that far. And Mei Lin began carefully cutting away his shirt while Lian built up the fire. The bruising was worse than they'd feared, spreading across his entire right side from armpit to hip. When Mei Lin pressed gently against the ribs, Caleb's sharp intake of breath told them what they needed to know. Broken, Lian said flatly. At least 2, maybe more. He needs a doctor, Mei Lin said. There's no doctor closer than the settlement, and that's 2 days' ride. Lian studied Caleb's face. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow and rapid. We'll have to do what we can here. They worked together with the practiced efficiency of women who'd learned to make do with nothing. Mei Lin boiled water for willow bark tea, while Lian carefully wrapped Caleb's ribs with strips torn from the cleanest sheet she could find. The binding would help, but it couldn't fix what was broken inside. By nightfall, Caleb was burning with fever. Infection, Lian said, pressing her hand to his forehead. Or internal bleeding. Or both. What do we do? For the first time since the storm, Mei Lin's voice carried real panic. Lian looked at her sister, then at the unconscious man who'd saved their lives and asked nothing in return. The practical part of her brain, the part that had kept them alive through 5 years of hell, said they should take what supplies they could carry and run. Caleb couldn't stop them now. The marshal wouldn't look for them here if Caleb was too sick to be questioned, but even as she thought it, she knew they wouldn't. I'll ride for the settlement, Lian said. Get a doctor. That's 2 days there and back. He might not have that long. Then you keep him alive until I return. Lian gripped her sister's shoulders. You've always been better at the gentle things. Keep him warm. Keep him hydrated. Watch for signs of bleeding. I'll ride as fast as I can. Lian, you don't know the way. You've never been... Then I'll figure it out. We don't have another choice. 30 minutes later, Lian was saddling the gentlest of Caleb's horses, a mare named Bessie, who seemed to tolerate incompetent riders. She'd never ridden alone before, never navigated by landmarks she didn't know, but fear was an excellent teacher. Mei Lin came to the barn door, wrapped in a shawl against the cold. Follow the creek bed west until you hit the main trail. The settlement is north from there. Anyone you meet can point you the rest of the way. Take care of him, Lian said, swinging up into the saddle with more confidence than she felt. I will. Mei Lin's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Come back safe. Always together, remember? Always together. Lian rode into the gathering darkness, following the frozen creek by moonlight. The temperature dropped as night deepened, and she pulled her coat tighter, grateful that Caleb had insisted on giving them proper winter gear. The mare was steady beneath her, seeming to understand the urgency even if she couldn't know the cause. The night stretched endless. Every shadow looked like a pursuing rider. Every sound made her heart race. But she kept moving, following the creek bed until it met a wider trail marked by wagon ruts and hoof prints. North. Mei Lin had said north. Lian turned the mare and urged her faster. Dawn broke cold and clear. Lian's hands were numb on the reins, her face raw from wind, but she didn't slow, couldn't slow. Somewhere behind her, Mei Lin was fighting to keep Caleb alive. Every minute mattered. She reached the settlement by mid-morning, a collection of rough buildings huddled along a muddy main street. A hand-painted sign proclaimed it Redemption Creek, population 147. Lian barely noticed. She rode straight for the largest building, dismounted badly, and stumbled through the door. A room full of men turned to stare at her. A saloon. She'd walked into a saloon. I need a doctor, she said in English, her accent thicker when she was tired. Please, man is dying. An older man with kind eyes stood from a corner table. I'm Doc Morrison. What happened? The words tumbled out. The horse, the ribs, the fever. The doctor listened, nodding, already gathering his coat and medical bag. How far? He asked. Half-day's ride. Maybe less if we hurry. I'll get my horse. They rode back together, the doctor asking questions about symptoms while Lian answered as best she could. He didn't ask why a Chinese woman was alone on the frontier or whose life she was trying to save. For that, she was grateful. They made good time, reaching the cabin by late afternoon. Lian dismounted and ran for the door, bursting inside with Doc Morrison close behind. Mei Lin looked up from where she sat beside Caleb's bed, a damp cloth in her hand. Her face was exhausted but relieved. You made it, she said. He's still breathing. The fever broke an hour ago. Doc Morrison moved past them, already examining Caleb with practiced efficiency. He pressed carefully along the ribs, listened to breathing, checked pupils and pulse. 3 broken ribs, he said finally. But no internal bleeding that I can tell. The fever was his body fighting the trauma. You did good work with the binding. He looked at Mei Lin. You likely saved his life, keeping him stable. Mei Lin's face flushed. I just did what needed doing. Most people panic. You didn't. The doctor pulled medicines from his bag, powders for pain, tinctures for infection. He'll need to stay still for at least 3 weeks. No work, minimal movement. The ribs need time to knit back together. We can manage that, Leon said. Doc Morrison nodded, then seemed to really see them for the first time. 2 Chinese women in a white man's cabin, clearly living here, clearly familiar with the space. You work for Hartley? He asked carefully. Yes, Leon said, meeting his eyes. He hired us to help with the horses. Something in the doctor's expression shifted, but he only nodded. Well, he's lucky to have you. I'll check on him in a week. Meanwhile, keep him warm, make sure he drinks, and don't let him do anything stupid. After the doctor left, the sisters collapsed into chairs on either side of Caleb's bed. Leon felt the exhaustion of the past day and night crash over her like a wave. Thank you, Mei-Lin said softly, for going, for bringing help. I wasn't going to let him die after he saved our lives. It's more than that now, though, isn't it? Mei-Lin looked at her. We're not just workers anymore, Don't, Leon warned. Don't start thinking we're family or something. This is still an arrangement, still temporary. But even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. Somewhere in the past weeks, things had changed. They'd stopped being fugitives and started being something else. Something she didn't have a name for yet. Caleb woke the next morning, groggy from the doctor's medicine, but aware. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Easy, Mei-Lin said, helping him settle back. You've got 3 broken ribs. Doctor said you need to stay still. The horses, Caleb started. Are fine, Leon interrupted. We've been taking care of them. You taught us well. He looked between them, something like surprise crossing his face. You went for the doctor. Yes. That was a hard ride, dangerous for someone who doesn't know the country. So was staying here and watching you die, Leon said flatly. We're not in the habit of letting people die when we can prevent it. A small smile touched his lips. Guess we have that in common. Over the next 3 weeks, the dynamic in the cabin shifted completely. Caleb was stuck in bed, helpless as a child, dependent on the sisters for everything. It should have been awkward or humiliating, but somehow it wasn't. Mei-Lin took to nursing with the same gentle competence she showed the horses, and Caleb accepted her care with quiet gratitude. Leon handled the practical matters, managing the horses alone, cooking meals, keeping the cabin running. She found herself falling into a rhythm she'd never known before, a kind of domestic routine that should have felt like prison, but somehow didn't. They talked more during those weeks than they had in all the time before. Long evening conversations while Caleb was too sore to sleep, stories trading back and forth like currency. Caleb told them about growing up in Texas, about his father's ranch and his mother's garden, about learning to ride before he could walk, about the way horses understood things people didn't. He talked about Mary, his wife, and little Emma, who'd barely lived long enough to have a name. I thought I'd die too when they did, he admitted one night, his voice rough. Wanted to for a while, but then I realized dying was the easy part. Living was what took courage. Mei-Lin told him about Guangzhou, about their mother's small room above the tea shop, about the hunger that had driven their mother to make the choice she'd made. She wasn't cruel, Mei-Lin said, just desperate. We all were. Do you hate her? Caleb asked. Sometimes, Mei-Lin admitted, but mostly I just understand her better now. Survival makes people do terrible things. Leon was quieter, less willing to share. But one night when Caleb asked about the ship that had brought them to America, the words came tumbling out. The overcrowded hold, the sickness, the girl who'd died and been thrown overboard like garbage. The way they'd arrived in San Francisco with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the promise of work that turned out to be a different kind of prison. 5 years we've been here, she said, and we're still running, still looking for a place that feels safe enough to stop. Maybe you found it, Caleb said quietly. We can't stay here forever. You know that. Why not? Because sooner or later the marshal will come back. Because we're Chinese in a country that doesn't want us. Because... She stopped, frustrated. Because nothing good lasts. Not if you don't let it, Caleb said. But if you keep running from everything good because you're afraid it'll end, you never get to have it at all. The words stayed with Leon long after the lamp was blown out, and the cabin fell silent. 3 weeks to the day after the accident, Caleb got out of bed without help. He was thinner, moved carefully, but the fever was long gone and the ribs were healing clean. Doctor said another week of light work, Mei Lin reminded him. Doctor also said I was lucky, Caleb replied. Lucky to have you two here. He walked to the door, opened it to the early March air. Spring was coming. You could feel it in the wind, see it in the way the snow was starting to retreat from the southern slopes. I need to tell you something, he said, not turning around. Both of you. The sisters exchanged glances. Lian felt her stomach tighten. Marshal Wade came by while I was laid up, Caleb continued, or tried to. Mei Lin turned him away at the door, told him I was too sick for visitors. But he'll be back, and next time he might not ask permission. We know, Lian said, which means we're running out of time to make a decision. He finally turned to face them. About the marriage option. The word hung in the air between them like smoke. Mei Lin looked at Lian. Lian looked at the floor. It can't be both of us, Lian said finally. The law won't allow it. No, Caleb agreed. It would have to be one. Then it's impossible, Lian said firmly. We promised. I know what we promised, Mei Lin interrupted. Her voice was soft, but there was steel underneath. But Lian, you need to listen to me. Really listen. She stood, walked to where her sister sat. I've been thinking about this for 3 weeks. Every day while I took care of Caleb, every night while you were sleeping, and I think... She took a breath. I think I want to do it. Lian felt like she'd been kicked by the same horse that had broken Caleb's ribs. What? I want to marry him, if he'll have me. Mei Lin, you can't be serious. You barely know him. This was supposed to be temporary, just until... Until what? Mei Lin asked. Until we run again? Until we find another camp, another city, another place that doesn't want us? I'm tired of running, Lian. I'm tired of being afraid every time I hear hoofbeats. So you'll just give up, tie yourself to a man, to a place? I'm not giving up. I'm choosing. Mei Lin's eyes were bright but determined. For the first time since we left Guangzhou, I'm choosing something instead of just surviving what happens to me. Lian stood abruptly, needing movement, needing air. She walked to the window, stared out at the horses in the corral. You're choosing him over me, she said quietly. No. Mei Lin came to stand beside her. I'm choosing a life where both of us can be safe. Where you can be safe. I don't need... Yes, you do. You need it as much as I do. You're just too stubborn to admit it. Mei Lin took her hand. We made a promise to stay together. But maybe together doesn't mean the same thing it did when we were 14. Maybe it just means we're both alive, both free, both choosing our own paths. What if your path takes you away from me? It won't. This ranch, this place, it can be home for both of us. You can stay or go or come back whenever you want. But at least one of us will have papers, protection, a legal right to exist. Mei Lin squeezed her hand. Let me do this, Lian. Let me be the strong one this time. Lian felt tears burning behind her eyes and forced them back. She'd learned long ago that crying didn't change anything. What if he hurts you? She whispered. Then you'll kill him, and we'll run, Mei Lin said simply. But I don't think he will. I think he's exactly what he seems. A good man who's been hurt and is trying to do something right. Lian finally looked at her sister. You love him. It wasn't a question. Mei Lin's silence was answer enough. When did it happen? Lian asked. I don't know. Maybe when he rode into that storm to save us. Maybe when he lied to the marshal. Maybe when he lay there burning with fever and the first thing he asked when he woke up was whether the horses were fed. Mei Lin's voice was tender. Does it matter when? It matters because love makes people stupid, makes them weak. Or maybe it makes them brave enough to stop running. Caleb had stayed by the door, giving them space, but now he cleared his throat. I should say something here, I think. Both sisters turned to him. Mei Lin, he said, looking directly at her. I'm not going to pretend this is a normal courtship or that I have romantic words ready. I'm a simple man who lives alone and talks more to horses than people. But I can promise you honesty, respect, and safety. I can promise that you will never be property in my eyes, that your sister will always be welcome here, and that if you want to leave someday, I won't stop you. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. I can also promise that these last 3 weeks, having you here taking care of me, talking to me, trusting me, It's meant more than I know how to say. You make me remember that life doesn't have to be just survival, that there's still good things worth having. Mei Lin's face flushed pink. Are you asking? I'm asking. Will you marry me? The cabin fell absolutely silent. Even the wind outside seemed to hold its breath. Yes, Mei Lin said. I will. Lian closed her eyes, felt something breaking and reforming inside her chest. The promise they'd made as children, the bond that had kept them alive. It wasn't ending. It was just changing shape. Okay, she said finally. Okay, but I have conditions. Caleb nodded. Name them. I stay here too. I keep working, keep earning, keep my independence. This doesn't make me a guest in your house. It makes me a partner in this arrangement. Agreed. And if you ever hurt her, you'll kill me, Caleb finished. I know. I'd expect nothing less. And Mei Lin gets half of everything. The ranch, the horses, all of it. Legal and documented. Caleb was quiet for a moment, then, I'll do you one better. I'll split it 3 ways, equal shares for all of us. Lian blinked. What? You both work this land. You both make it run. Seems fair you both own part of it. He looked between them. Unless you object. Lian had no words. In 5 years in America, no one had ever offered them ownership of anything. They'd been workers, property, fugitives, never partners. Why? She managed. Because it's right, Caleb said simply. And because I meant what I said about you always being welcome. This way, no matter what happens, you've got a place that's legally yours. Mei Lin was crying now, silent tears running down her face. Lian felt her own eyes burning. When? Mei Lin asked through her tears. Soon as I can ride to the settlement, Caleb said. We'll need to file the marriage license, get the deed changed, make it all legal and proper. A week, maybe 2. Marshal Wade, let him come, Caleb said. By the time he does, everything will be filed and recorded. You'll be a citizen, protected by law. He can't touch you. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Caleb's ribs healed enough for him to ride, and he made the trip to Redemption Creek with both sisters accompanying him. Lian half expected trouble, but the town received them with surprising indifference. People stared. Chinese women were unusual enough, but no one challenged them. The clerk who filed the marriage license barely looked up from his paperwork. Names? Caleb Hartley and Mei Lin. Lin. She got a Christian name? That is her name, Caleb said flatly. Put it down exactly like that. The clerk shrugged and wrote it down. Just like that, with scratches of ink on paper, Mei Lin became Mei Lin Hartley, citizen of the United States. The deed took longer, required a lawyer and witnesses, but Caleb pushed it through with quiet determination. When it was done, the ranch belonged equally to Caleb Hartley, Mei Lin Hartley, and Lian Lin. Just in case, Caleb told Lian when she protested. In case anything happens to me. In case Wade comes back. In case you need proof that you belong here. They were married 3 days later in a simple ceremony at the settlement's small church, with Doc Morrison and his wife serving as witnesses. Mei Lin wore a dress borrowed from Mrs. Morrison, simple blue cotton, nothing fancy, but clean and pretty. She looked terrified and happy in equal measure. Lian stood beside her sister and tried not to feel like she was losing something precious. Tried to remember that this was survival, strategy, protection. Tried to ignore the way Mei Lin smiled when Caleb took her hand. The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Spring was in full bloom now, the plains turning green, wildflowers beginning to dot the hillsides. It should have felt like a beginning. Instead, Lian felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, watching her sister walk away across a bridge she couldn't follow. That night, Caleb insisted on sleeping in the barn again. The marriage is legal, he told Mei Lin, but I'm not going to assume anything beyond that. You tell me when you're ready for more, if you ever are. Until then, nothing changes. After he left, the sisters prepared for bed in silence. Finally, Mei Lin spoke. Are you angry? No, Lian said honestly. I'm scared. Of what? Of losing you. Of being alone. Of... She struggled for words. Of you being happy without me. Mei Lin crossed to her sister's bed, sat down beside her. Lian, you're my sister, my twin, half of my soul. That doesn't change because I signed papers or put on a ring. She took Lian's hand. You're not losing me. You're gaining a brother and a home. It doesn't feel like that. I know, but give it time, please. Lian nodded, not trusting herself to speak. But that night, alone in her bed, while Mei Lin slept peacefully across the room, Lian cried for the first time since they'd left Guangzhou. Cried for the childhood promise she'd thought would last forever. Cried for the fear that she'd always be the one watching others find happiness while she stood guard. Cried because deep down, beneath the fear and anger, she knew Mei Lin had made the right choice. And that knowledge was somehow the hardest thing of all. Spring transformed the plains into something Lian hadn't known existed in Wyoming. A sea of green dotted with purple lupine and yellow arrowleaf, the air sweet with grass and warming earth. The horses grew sleek on new pasture, and Caleb's small herd expanded as mares from last year's breeding began to foal. The work multiplied, but so did the rhythm of their days, settling into patterns that felt almost natural. Almost. Lian watched her sister move through the world differently now. Mei Lin had always been gentle, but marriage seemed to have unlocked something deeper, a confidence Lian hadn't seen before. She spoke up more during meals, offered opinions about the ranch without waiting to be asked, laughed more freely. And when Caleb looked at her, which he did often when he thought no one was watching, his whole face softened into something that made Lian's chest tight. True to his word, Caleb still slept in the barn most nights. But sometimes Mei Lin would bring him coffee in the early morning, and they'd stand together watching the sunrise, talking in low voices that carried warmth even if Lian couldn't make out the words. Sometimes their hands would brush, and neither would pull away. Lian tried not to feel like an intruder in her own life. You're brooding again, Mei Lin said one afternoon as they worked side by side mending fence posts. 2 months married now, and her sister had developed an annoying ability to read Lian's silences. I'm thinking. Same thing with you. Mei Lin drove a post deep with practiced efficiency. What about this time? Nothing important. Lian! Mei Lin stopped working, fixed her with that look that said she wasn't going to let it go. Talk to me. Lian set down her hammer, wiped sweat from her forehead. The spring sun was hotter than she'd expected. Do you ever miss it? Just being us? We're still us. You know what I mean. Mei Lin was quiet for a moment, considering. Sometimes, she admitted, but I don't miss the fear. I don't miss looking over my shoulder every minute or wondering if today's the day someone decides we're not worth keeping alive. She reached over, touched Lian's hand. Don't you feel safer now? Safe isn't the same as happy. No, but it's the foundation for it. Mei Lin smiled gently. You could be happy here too, you know, if you'd let yourself. I'm fine. You're lonely. The word hit harder than Lian wanted to admit. I have you. You do. But you used to have all of me, and now I'm split between you and Caleb. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Lian wanted to deny it, but lying to Mei Lin had never worked. They'd shared the same womb, the same heartbeat for 9 months before birth. Some truths couldn't be hidden between them. I don't know how to be just one person, she said finally. We've always been 2 halves of the same whole, and now you're becoming something separate, and I'm just stuck. You're not stuck. You're scared. Mei Lin's voice was gentle but firm. Scared that if you let yourself care about this place, about this life, it'll get taken away like everything else. So you hold yourself apart and call it strength. It is strength. It's a prison, Lian, one you built yourself. Before Lian could respond, hoofbeats sounded from the ridge. Both sisters tensed immediately, old instincts flaring, but it was just Caleb returning from Redemption Creek with supplies and mail. Ladies, he called out, swinging down from his horse. He was moving easier now, the ribs fully healed. Got something for you. He handed Mei Lin a letter. She took it, frowned at the unfamiliar handwriting on the envelope. It's addressed to both of us, she said, showing it to Lian. From San Francisco. Lian's stomach dropped. Only one person in San Francisco would know where to find them. Chen Wei, the old woman who ran the boarding house where they'd lived before heading to the railroad. They'd written her once after arriving at Caleb's ranch, wanting someone to know they were alive in case something happened. Mei Lin opened the letter with shaking hands. As she read,
Her face went pale. "What is it?" Lian demanded. Mei Lin handed her the letter without speaking.
Lian read quickly, her English better than her sister's after years of forced practice. Chen Wei's letter was brief and devastating. Their mother had died 3 months ago in Guangzhou. Chen Wei had learned this from another immigrant who'd recently arrived from their hometown. There was no inheritance, no final message, just the cold fact of death from someone who'd sold them and never looked back. "She's gone," Mei Lin whispered. Lian felt nothing at first. Then something hot and terrible rose in her chest. Not grief exactly, but a complicated tangle of anger and loss and bitter relief. "Good," she said harshly. "Now, we don't have to wonder if she ever regretted what she did." Lian, no. Don't ask me to mourn her. She sold us like cattle. She chose her own survival over ours. Whatever happened to her after, she earned it. Caleb, who'd been quietly unpacking supplies, spoke up. "Loss doesn't have to make sense to still hurt." "I'm not hurting," Lian insisted. "I'm angry." "Anger's just hurt wearing armor," he said quietly. Lian wanted to argue, but Mei Lin was crying now. Soft, broken sobs that made her shoulders shake. And despite everything, despite the anger and the betrayal and the years of abandonment, the sound of her sister's grief cracked something open in Lian's chest. She pulled Mei Lin close, held her while she cried. "I've got you," she murmured. "I've got you." Over Mei Lin's shoulder, she saw Caleb watching them with something like understanding in his eyes. He nodded once, then took the supplies and disappeared toward the barn, giving them privacy. That night, the sisters slept in the same bed like they had as children, curled around each other in shared grief and comfort. Lian listened to Mei Lin's breathing even out into sleep and tried to understand her own tangled emotions. Their mother was dead. The woman who'd given them life and then sold them away, who'd made an impossible choice in impossible circumstances. Lian had spent 5 years hating her, and now that hate had nowhere to go. In the morning, Mei Lin seemed smaller somehow, fragile. She went through the motions of morning chores, but her usual brightness was dimmed. "I keep thinking about her last moments," she said over breakfast. "Whether she was alone, whether she thought of us."
Probably not," Lian said, more gently than she felt. "She made her choice and lived with it. That's all any of us can do." "Do you really believe she didn't love us?" Lian considered the question carefully. "I think she loved us the way a drowning woman loves the child she has to let go of to save herself. It's real, but it doesn't change the outcome." Caleb, who'd been quietly eating, set down his fork. "My mother died when I was 12, he said. "Cholera.
Before she went, she told me that love isn't always enough to protect people. Sometimes the world's just too hard." He looked at Mei Lin. "But that doesn't mean the love wasn't real." Mei Lin's eyes filled with tears again. "Thank you," she whispered. The grief settled over them like fog, softening the edges of their days. Caleb was patient with Mei Lin's sadness, gave her space when she needed it, and quiet company when she didn't. Lian found herself grudgingly grateful for his presence, for the way he seemed to understand that comfort didn't always require words. A week after the letter arrived, Marshal Wade returned. Lian spotted the riders first, 3 of them again, approaching in the late afternoon sun. Her heart kicked against her ribs even as she reminded herself that they had papers now, legal protection, citizenship. "Caleb," she called toward the barn, "company." He emerged immediately, took one look at the riders, and his jaw tightened. "Inside. Both of you. Don't come out no matter what you hear." "We're legal now," Mei Lin protested. "We don't have to hide." "Maybe not, but I don't trust Wade to care about legalities when there's reward money involved." Caleb's voice was steel. "Please, just let me handle this." The sisters retreated to the cabin but stayed by the window, watching through the gap in the curtains. Wade and his deputies reined up in the yard. The marshal looked older than Lian remembered, more worn down by whatever demons chased lawmen in their sleep. "Hartley," Wade said, not dismounting, "we need to talk." "Then talk." Caleb stood loose and ready, his hand nowhere near the rifle propped against the barn door but close enough to matter. "Those Chinese women, the fugitives from the railroad camp, you know anything about them?" "Told you last time. I haven't seen any fugitives." "Funny thing." Wade pulled a paper from his coat.
County clerk says you filed a marriage license 2 months back. Married a Chinese woman named Mei Lin Lin. That strike you as coincidental? I married my wife. What of it? Your wife matches the description of one of the women who ran from Tucker's camp. Does she? Caleb's voice was dangerously calm. And Tucker identified her personally, did he? Wade shifted in his saddle. Tucker says both women looked the same. Twins. Hard to tell them apart. So, he can't identify which is which, but you're here anyway. Caleb crossed his arms. On what grounds? My wife is a legal citizen of the United States by marriage. Even if she used to work for Tucker, which I'm not confirming, she's not his property anymore. The Chinese Labor Contract Act doesn't override citizenship law. You know that, Wade. So does whoever's paying you to chase shadows. The two men stared at each other. In the cabin, Leanne held her breath. There's another woman, Wade said. The other twin. Where is she? That's none of your concern. It is if she's unlawfully on this property. She's part owner of this property, Caleb said flatly. Deeded legal. You want to see the papers? Wade's face darkened. You're harboring a fugitive. I'm living on land I jointly own with my wife and her business partner. All documented and filed with the county. Unless you've got a warrant that says otherwise, I suggest you move along. One of the deputies leaned toward Wade, murmured something. The marshal's jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. This isn't over, Wade said finally. It is unless you've got legal cause to continue it. Caleb's voice never rose, but there was iron underneath. And Wade, next time you come onto my land without a warrant, I'll treat you like any other trespasser. We clear? Wade jerked his reins, wheeled his horse around. The deputies followed, and the three riders disappeared back over the ridge. Caleb stood watching until they were gone, then turned toward the cabin. You can come out now. Leanne and Mei Lin emerged. Mei Lin was shaking. He knows, she said. He knows who we are. Suspecting and proving are different things, Caleb said. And even if he proves it, you're protected now, both of you. You said I'm part owner. Leanne looked at him. You told him that. Because it's true. The deed's filed. Legal and binding. Caleb met her eyes. I told you, this is your home now. Not just a place to hide. Home. Something in Leanne's chest loosened slightly. Not trust, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. That night, Caleb didn't sleep in the barn. Instead, he sat at the table cleaning his rifle while the sisters tried to settle. He'll come back, Leanne said, with or without a warrant. Probably, Caleb agreed. But each time he does, our position gets stronger. We're established now. Legal residents, property owners. The longer you're here living regular lives, the harder it is for him to claim you're fugitives. Unless Tucker identifies us directly. Tucker's 3 weeks ride east. By the time Wade brings him out here, if he ever does, you'll have been law-abiding citizens for months. Caleb looked up from the rifle. Sometimes the law protects people. Sometimes you just have to outlast the bastards trying to abuse it. You've done this before, Mei Lin said. It wasn't a question. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. My wife Mary, he said finally. She was half Cherokee. Her father was white, which gave her some protection, but not enough. There were people who said our marriage wasn't legal, that she couldn't own property, that our daughter was... He stopped, his hands tight on the rifle. I learned how to use the law as a weapon because I had to. Didn't save them in the end, but I learned. What happened to them? Leanne asked, though part of her didn't want to know. Fever, like I said, but it was more than that. The doctor in town wouldn't come when I sent for him, said he didn't treat Indians. Caleb's voice was flat, emotionless, which somehow made it worse. By the time I found a doctor who would, it was too late for both of them. The cabin fell silent except for the crackle of the fire. I'm sorry, Mei Lin said softly. Me too. Caleb set the rifle aside. But it taught me something. The law fails people all the time, but having it on your side is still better than not having it at all. So we'll use every legal protection we can, and we'll make it impossible for Wade to justify coming after you. Over the following weeks, Caleb made good on that promise. He took them into Redemption Creek regularly, made sure people saw them conducting normal business, buying supplies, selling horses, existing openly,
The town was small enough that everyone knew everyone's business, which meant everyone soon knew that Caleb Hartley had married a Chinese woman and brought her sister into business partnership. Reactions were mixed. Some people stared or muttered, but no one challenged them directly. Doc Morrison and his wife were actively friendly, inviting them to dinner once. The general store owner was polite if reserved. The saloon keeper ignored them entirely, which felt like acceptance of a sort. Slowly, impossibly, Leon began to feel like maybe they weren't fugitives anymore. Maybe they were just people. The change showed in small ways. Mei-Lin sang while she worked now, old songs from Guangzhou that their mother had taught them. Leon caught herself planning for next year's foaling season instead of next week's escape route. And Caleb seemed to stand a little taller, smile a little easier, like having people around was waking up parts of him that had been sleeping for 6 years. Late one evening in early summer, Leanne was bringing the horses in from pasture when she heard voices from the barn. Caleb and Mei-Lin talking low. She should have announced herself, should have given them privacy. Instead, she stopped, hidden by the barn door, and listened. "I don't want you to feel obligated," Caleb was saying. "The marriage was for protection. That's still all it has to be if that's what you want." "What if I want more?" Mei-Lin's voice was soft but certain. Silence. Then, "Do you?" "I think I've wanted more for a while now. I was just afraid to say it, afraid you were only being kind." "Mei-Lin." Caleb's voice was rough with emotion. "I haven't been kind. I've been selfish, trying to give you space when what I really wanted was—" He trailed off. "I'm not good with words." "Then show me." Leon turned away before she could see or hear more, her face burning. She finished with the horses in silence, gave them extra time, extra attention, anything to delay returning to the cabin. When she finally did, Mei-Lin was alone, preparing dinner. Her cheeks were flushed, and there was something different in her eyes. A quiet joy that made Leon's chest ache. "Caleb said he needs to check the north fence," Mei-Lin said, not quite meeting Leon's gaze. "He'll be back late." "Okay." They worked in silence for a while, the kind that used to be comfortable but now felt weighted with things unsaid. "I love him," Mei-Lin said suddenly. "I need you to know that. This isn't just strategy anymore, it's real." Leon kept her hands busy chopping vegetables. "I know." "Are you angry?" "No." And surprisingly, it was true. Leon was sad, maybe. Lonely, definitely. But not angry. "You deserve to be happy. So do you." "I am happy," Leon lied. Mei-Lin came around the table, took the knife from Leon's hands, and pulled her into a hug. "You're my sister, my twin. Nothing changes that, not marriage, not love, not anything." "Everything's already changed," Leon said into Mei-Lin's shoulder. "Then we'll figure out the new shape of things together, like we always do." That night, Caleb didn't sleep in the barn. Len lay in her bed listening to the soft murmur of voices from across the cabin, the sound of her sister's quiet laughter, and tried not to feel like she was losing something precious. Tried to remember that Mei-Lin wasn't being taken from her. She was just choosing to be more than half of a whole. Tried to believe that there was space in this new life for all three of them. The summer deepened, bringing long days of work and short nights of rest. The ranch thrived under their combined effort. Caleb's experience, Mei-Lin's gentle touch with the animals, Leon's fierce determination to prove they belonged. By July, they'd sold 6 horses to a rancher from Colorado and had orders for 4 more. Money accumulated in the tin box Caleb kept locked in the cabin. Not much by some standards, but more than Leanne and Mei-Lin had ever had in their own names. Proof that work could lead to something other than survival. Then, on a hot afternoon when the air shimmered with heat and the horses stood lazy in the shade, a lone rider appeared. Not Wade this time. Someone else. Caleb saw him first, called out a warning. The sisters came running from the barn to find a young Chinese man dismounting in the yard. Thin, travel-worn, with desperate eyes. He spoke in rapid Cantonese, words tumbling over themselves. Leon stepped forward, answered in the same language. "He says his name is Zhang Wei," she translated for Caleb. "He escaped from a mining camp in Montana. He's been running for 3 weeks. He heard in Redemption Creek that Chinese women lived here and thought maybe—" She trailed off. "Thought maybe we'd help," Mei-Lin finished softly. The young man, he couldn't have been more than 20, swayed on his feet.
Lian caught him before he fell. "He's half-starved," she said. "Caleb, bring him inside." Caleb's voice was grim.
"We'll feed him, hear his story, figure out what comes next." They settled Zhang Wei at the table with food and water. Between bites, he told his story in halting Cantonese. The mining camp where he'd worked had collapsed, killing 3 men. The owner had blamed the Chinese workers, claiming they'd weakened the supports. Zhang Wei had run before they could hang him for it. "They're looking for me," he said, his hand shaking around his cup. "There's a price on my head, but I didn't do anything wrong. The supports were rotten before we ever touched them." Lian translated, watched Caleb's face as he listened. "Can he prove it?" Caleb asked. "No, his word against the mine owners, and he's Chinese." "Which means his word means nothing." Caleb rubbed his face tiredly. "How long can he stay ahead of them?" "Not long," Zhang Wei said in broken English, surprising them. "They have dogs, horses. I have nothing." Caleb stood, walked to the window, stared out at the yard. Lian could see him thinking, weighing options, calculating risks. Finally, he turned back. "You can stay the night. Rest. I'll give you supplies for the road, but come morning, you need to move on." "Caleb?" Mei Lin started. "No." His voice was firm. "I'm sorry, but no. We've built something here, something legal and protected. Harboring a fugitive with a price on his head puts all of that at risk. Puts you two at risk."
"So we just send him out to die?" Lian demanded. "I'm giving him food, water, directions to the western settlements where he might find safety. That's more than most would do. It's not enough. It's all I can offer without destroying everything we've built." Caleb looked at her steadily. "You think I like it? You think this doesn't remind me of every time someone turned Mary away from a door? But I have to think about you two first. That's the choice I'm making." Lian wanted to argue, but she understood. Hated it, but understood it. Zhang Wei spent the night in the barn, ate breakfast with them at dawn, and accepted the supplies Caleb packed. He thanked them in Chinese, bowed deeply to the sisters, and rode west on one of Caleb's oldest horses. They watched him disappear into the morning sun. "We just sent him to his death," Lian said quietly. "Maybe," Caleb agreed. "Or maybe he makes it. But I couldn't risk you for someone I don't know. I couldn't watch Wade come back and take everything away because I made the noble choice instead of the smart one." "When did you become so calculating?" "When I realized noble choices had already cost me everyone I loved." The words hung heavy between them. Mei Lin reached for Caleb's hand, squeezed it gently. He squeezed back, but his face remained troubled. Zhang Wei's visit haunted Lian for days afterward. She kept seeing his desperate eyes, kept hearing the hope in his voice when he'd learned Chinese women lived here. Hope she'd helped extinguish by standing silent while Caleb sent him away. But she also understood that Caleb was right. They'd found something rare and precious: safety, legality, a home. Risking it for a stranger was noble but stupid, and Lian had stopped being able to afford stupidity the day her mother sold them. Still, it sat heavy in her chest, a reminder that the world was full of people like them, running and desperate, and that safety meant sometimes turning away from others who needed exactly what you'd been given. It meant living with choices that had no good answers, just like their mother had. The incident with Zhang Wei changed something in the delicate balance they'd built. Lian found herself watching Caleb differently, seeing not just the man who'd saved them, but also the man who'd learned to make hard choices, the man who'd calculated risk versus reward and chosen their safety over someone else's life. She couldn't decide if that made him wise or just another person the frontier had turned cold. 2 weeks after Zhang Wei rode west, word came back through the settlement. A Chinese man matching his description had been found dead near the Colorado border, shot in the back, his horse and supplies stolen. Whether he'd been killed by bounty hunters or random thieves, no one knew. No one cared enough to investigate. Caleb heard the news when he went to town for supplies. He came home silent, unloaded the wagon without speaking, and disappeared into the barn for the rest of the afternoon. Mei Lin found him there at sunset, sitting on a hay bale with his head in his hands. "It's not your fault," she said softly. "Isn't it?" His voice was hollow. "I gave him 1 old horse and 2 days' food, and sent him into country I knew he couldn't survive." "You gave him a chance. That's more than he had." A chance isn't enough when the whole world's hunting you. Caleb looked up at her, his eyes haunted. I keep thinking about Mary and Emma, about all the people who could have helped but didn't. Told myself I'd never be that person, that if I ever had the power to save someone, I would. You saved us, Maylin reminded him, because it was convenient, because you weren't putting me at risk yet. He stood, paced the barn, but the moment helping became dangerous, I sent that boy to his death. You protected your family. That's what you were supposed to do. Family. The word seemed to catch in his throat. Is that what we are? Maylin crossed to him, took his hands in hers. Yes, that's exactly what we are. He pulled her close then, held her like she was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting under his feet. Leanne, who'd followed her sister to the barn but stopped in the doorway, turned away to give them privacy. But she understood what Caleb was feeling, the guilt of survival, the weight of choices that had no right answers. She'd carried that weight since the day they'd left Guangzhou, since the day their mother had looked them in the eyes and chosen hunger over daughters. Some decisions broke you no matter which way you chose. August brought scorching heat that turned the grasslands brown and made the horses sluggish. They worked early mornings and late evenings, hiding from the worst of the sun during midday. The rhythm of ranch life continued, feeding, training, breeding, selling. Money accumulated. Their legal standing grew stronger with each passing month. But Leanne felt increasingly restless, like she was waiting for something she couldn't name. One evening, she was sitting on the porch watching the sunset when Caleb joined her, 2 cups of coffee in hand. He offered her one and settled into the other chair. You're thinking about leaving, he said. It wasn't a question. Leanne sipped her coffee, considered lying, decided against it. Sometimes. Where would you go? I don't know, California maybe, or north to Montana. Somewhere I can be more than the sister who stayed behind. You're not just that here, aren't I? She looked at him. Maylin has you now. She has a husband, a home, a future. What do I have? A ranch you own 1/3 of. Work that matters. Family. Family, Leanne repeated. Is that what you call it when you're the extra person in someone else's marriage? Caleb was quiet for a moment. I know it's not easy, watching your sister build a life with someone else, but leaving won't make you less lonely. It'll just make you alone. Maybe that's better. At least then the loneliness would make sense. Or maybe you're using loneliness as an excuse not to let yourself belong here. The words hit closer than Leanne wanted to admit. She set down her coffee cup harder than necessary. You don't know me well enough to say what I'm doing. Maybe not, but I know what running looks like. I did it for 6 years after Mary died. Caleb stretched his legs out, stared at the darkening sky. I told myself I needed solitude, needed space. Truth was I was just afraid. Afraid if I let anyone close again, I'd lose them too, so I stayed alone and called it strength. And then we showed up. And then you showed up, he agreed, half dead in a snowstorm with nowhere else to go. And I had to choose between staying safe in my isolation or taking a risk. You think that's what I'm doing? Staying safe? I think you've been hurt so many times you've convinced yourself that not caring is the same as not hurting. He looked at her directly. But I've seen you with the horses. I've seen you working this land. You care, Leanne. You care so much it scares you. Leanne wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she sat in silence while the sky turned from gold to purple to deep blue, stars beginning to emerge like pinpricks in fabric. What if I can't do it? She said, finally, her voice small. What if I can't let go of always being ready to run? Then you practice staying until it gets easier. That's all any of us can do. Inside the cabin, they could hear Maylin singing while she prepared dinner. The sound drifted out warm and familiar, a reminder that home wasn't just a place, but also the people who made it feel safe. She'd miss you, Caleb said. If you left, it would break her heart. She has you now. She has both of us. Don't make her choose by running away. Leanne absorbed that, felt it settle into her bones. I won't leave, she said. Not yet anyway. That's a start. They sat together until Maylin called them for dinner, and something in Leanne's chest felt fractionally lighter. September brought the first real test of their fragile peace. Marshal Wade returned with 4 deputies and a different kind of determination in his eyes. They rode up at noon when all three of them were working in the corral, giving them no time to prepare or hide.
"Hartley," Wade called out. "Need to speak with you. Official business." Caleb straightened, wiped sweat from his face. "What kind of official business?" "The kind that involves your wife and her sister." Wade dismounted, pulled papers from his saddlebag. "Got sworn testimony here from Tucker at the railroad camp. Identifies Mei Lin Hartley and Lian Lin as the two Chinese workers who fled his employment and destroyed company property during their escape." Lian's blood went cold. Beside her, Mei Lin had gone pale. "Destroyed property." Caleb's voice was dangerously calm. "What property?" "Cook tent burned down the night they ran. Tucker's claiming they set the fire deliberately." "That's a lie," Lian said sharply. "We didn't burn anything. We just left." "You speak English pretty good for a railroad cook," one of the deputies observed. "I speak well enough to know a false accusation when I hear one." Wade pulled out more papers. "I've got warrants here for both women. Arson and theft. They'll need to come back to face trial." "Trial in Tucker's jurisdiction," Caleb said flatly, "where he controls the witnesses and the verdict's already decided." "Law's the law, Hartley. Law's supposed to be fair. This is revenge." "That's for a judge to decide." Wade gestured to his deputies. "Ladies, you need to come with us." Caleb stepped in front of the sisters. "No. You're interfering with legal—" "I'm protecting my wife and business partner from a corrupt warrant based on false testimony." Caleb's hand dropped to his hip where his revolver hung. "And I'm well within my rights to do so." The deputies shifted, hands moving toward their own weapons. The air went electric with tension. "You want to shoot a marshal over a couple of Chinese women?" Wade asked. "I want to protect my family from an injustice," Caleb replied. "You want to die enforcing one?" For a long moment, no one moved. Lian could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears, feel Mei Lin trembling beside her. "This isn't over," Wade said finally, his face dark with fury. "I'll be back with more men, and next time you won't be able to stop me." "Next time I'll have a lawyer and witnesses," Caleb said. "And we'll see how your false warrants hold up in front of a federal judge." Wade's jaw worked. "Federal judge won't care about—" "About citizens?" Caleb interrupted. "Because that's what my wife is. And her sister's a legal property owner with documented residency. You might find a local judge willing to overlook that, but federal law doesn't care about Tucker's hurt feelings." The standoff stretched another painful moment. Then Wade jerked his head toward his men and mounted up. "You're making a mistake, Hartley," he said from the saddle. "Wouldn't be my first. Won't be my last." They watched the lawmen ride away. Only when they'd disappeared over the ridge did Caleb lower his hand from his gun, and Lian realized he'd been ready to draw, ready to kill, ready to die protecting them. "Inside," Caleb said. "Now." In the cabin, he paced like a caged animal while the sisters sat in stunned silence. "Tucker must have paid him off good," Caleb said. "Wade wouldn't push this hard otherwise." "What do we do?" Mei Lin asked, her voice shaking. "We fight. Legally, properly, with everything we've got." He stopped pacing, looked at them. "But I need to know something first. Did you set that fire?" "No," Lian said firmly. "We left during shift change. The tent was fine. If it burned, it happened after." "You're sure?" "We're sure," Mei Lin confirmed. "Caleb, we wouldn't lie to you. Not about this." He studied them both, then nodded. "Okay, then here's what we're going to do. I'm riding to the settlement tonight, wiring a lawyer in Denver I know from my Army days. He's good, honest, and he owes me a favor. Meanwhile, you two stay here, stay armed, and if anyone comes who isn't me or Doc Morrison, you shoot first and ask questions later." "You can't go alone," Lian protested. "What if Wade's waiting?" "Wade's headed back east to gather more men. That gives me time." Caleb was already moving, gathering supplies. "I'll be back in 3 days, 4 at most. Can you hold the ranch that long?" "Yes," Lian said, more confidently than she felt. He paused, looked at Mei Lin. Something passed between them, too deep for words. Then he kissed her, quick and fierce and full of promise. "I'll come back," he said. "I swear it." "You better," Mei Lin whispered. He was gone within the hour, riding hard toward Redemption Creek on their fastest horse. The sisters spent that night armed and sleepless, taking turns on watch. Every sound made them jump. Every shadow looked like a threat. By dawn, they were exhausted but unharmed. The first day passed slowly. They did the necessary chores, feeding horses, checking water, maintaining routines. But their rifles were never far from hand. The second day brought riders. Not Wade. Someone worse. Tucker himself, with 6 men Leon recognized from the railroad camp. Men who'd looked at them with hungry eyes and cruel smiles. Men they'd fled into a blizzard to escape.
Well, well, Tucker drawled as they surrounded the cabin. The Chinese girls who caused me so much trouble. Been looking for you two for months. Leon and Mei Lin stood on the porch, rifles raised. They'd spent the morning preparing for this, loading weapons, positioning ammunition, mentally mapping escape routes. This is private property, Leon called out. Leave or we'll shoot. Tucker laughed. You even know how to use those guns, girl? In answer, Leon fired, not at him, but at the ground 3 feet from his horse's hooves. The animal reared, and Tucker fought to control it. Next one's higher, Leon said coldly. Now get off our land. Your land? Tucker's face twisted with rage. You're thieves and arsonists. Got warrants for your arrest. We're here to collect. Marshal Wade's warrants aren't valid without a federal review, Mei Lin said, her voice steadier than her hands. Our lawyers already filed the challenge. Your lawyer, Tucker repeated mockingly. Listen to them, boys. Chinese whores playing at being citizens. We are citizens, Leon said. Legal and documented. My sister's married to Caleb Hartley, owner of this ranch. I'm a deeded partner. You want to challenge that? Take it to court. I got my own court right here. Tucker gestured to his men. 6 witnesses who'll swear they saw you two burn down my tent. Saw you steal supplies. Saw you. Lie, Leon interrupted. You'll swear to lies because you're angry that 2 women escaped your plans to sell them. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Not the tent, not any supposed theft, just your wounded pride. Tucker's face went dark. Burn them out, boys. The men dismounted, began gathering kindling. Leon's heart hammered against her ribs. You burn this cabin, you're destroying citizen property, she said desperately. That's a federal crime. So's harboring fugitives. Guess we're all criminals today. One of the men approached with a lit torch. Mei Lin raised her rifle, aimed at his chest. Don't, she said quietly. He hesitated. Whatever he saw in her eyes made him stop. I said burn it, Tucker snapped. She'll shoot me, boss. So shoot her first. The moment crystallized. 6 men with guns against 2 women with rifles and nowhere to run. Leon knew the math. Knew they couldn't win. But she'd be damned if she'd go down without taking Tucker with her. She aimed at his chest. You want them to burn it? You light the fire yourself. Let's see how brave you are when you're the target. Tucker's hand moved toward his gun. Then hoofbeats, coming fast from the ridge. Doc Morrison appeared first, riding hard with his medical bag bouncing behind him. Behind him came 5 more riders, townspeople from Redemption Creek, including the general store owner and the clerk from the land office. Stop, Doc Morrison shouted, pulling up his horse. What in hell do you think you're doing, Tucker? Retrieving my property, Tucker said, but his confidence had wavered. Those women aren't property, they're citizens. Doc Morrison dismounted, positioned himself between Tucker's men and the cabin. And this is witnessed arson you're attempting. I'm deputizing these men right now to stop you. You can't deputize. I'm a licensed physician and officer of the court in 2 territories. I absolutely can. Doc Morrison pulled a badge from his pocket, tarnished and old, but legal. Now, get off this property before I arrest every last one of you. Tucker looked around, saw the odds shifting, and made a calculation. This isn't over. It is for today, Doc Morrison said firmly. Tucker and his men mounted up and rode off, throwing curses over their shoulders. When they were gone, Leon's legs nearly gave out with relief. Doc Morrison approached the porch slowly, hands visible. You ladies all right? How did you know? Mei Lin asked. Caleb wired me from town, asked me to keep an eye on the place until he got back with legal help. The doctor smiled slightly. Figured bringing witnesses was smarter than coming alone. Thank you, Leon said, her voice rough with emotion. You saved our lives. Just returning the favor. You saved Caleb's when he got kicked. Seemed fair.
The townspeople stayed through the afternoon, a visible deterrent to Tucker returning. They spoke little, asked no questions, just maintained a presence that said these women were under protection. By the time they left at sunset, Leon understood something new. They'd been building more than just legal safety these past months. They'd been building community, connections, the kind of social web that made people worth protecting. Caleb returned on the fourth day with a sharp-eyed lawyer from Denver and papers that made the warrants against them legally void pending federal review. The lawyer explained that Tucker would have to prove his case in a neutral court, with actual evidence rather than paid testimony. "It'll take months to resolve," the lawyer said. "But your position is strong. Legal marriage, property ownership, documented citizenship. Tucker's case is weak revenge at best." That night, after the lawyer had been settled in the barn and fed, the three of them sat around the table in exhausted silence. "I'm sorry," Caleb said finally. "I brought this on you by marrying Mei Lin, by giving you the deed. Made you visible when being invisible kept you safe." "No," Mei Lin said firmly. "You gave us the tools to fight back. Without the marriage, without the deed, Tucker would have dragged us away, and no one would have cared." "She's right," Leon added. "Visibility is protection now. Tucker can't make us disappear because too many people know we exist." Caleb reached across the table, took both their hands in his. "Then we see this through. Together." "Together," the sisters echoed. The legal battle stretched through fall and into winter. Tucker tried multiple tactics, claiming the marriage was fraudulent, challenging the deed, attempting to get witnesses from the railroad camp to testify against them. But Caleb's lawyer was relentless, filing countersuits and demanding evidence that Tucker couldn't produce. By December, Tucker's case had fallen apart. A federal judge ruled the warrants invalid, the accusations unsubstantiated, and ordered Tucker to pay court costs. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was enough. They were safe. The news came 2 days before Christmas. Caleb read the telegram twice, then looked up at the sisters with something like wonder in his eyes. "It's over," he said. "You're free. Legally, completely free." Mei Lin burst into tears. Leon sat down hard, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. Free. After 5 years of running, hiding, fearing every shadow and stranger, they were free. That night they celebrated quietly. A good meal, a bottle of whiskey Caleb had been saving, and the simple joy of safety. At some point, Mei Lin fell asleep against Caleb's shoulder, and he carried her to bed with infinite gentleness. Leon sat alone by the fire, watching the flames dance, feeling something vast and fragile settling in her chest. Caleb returned, poured them both more whiskey. "You were right," Leon said quietly, "about me being afraid to belong. I know what that fear looks like. I think I'm ready to try. Staying, belonging, being part of something instead of just surviving it." Caleb raised his glass. "To trying," Leon echoed. They drank in comfortable silence, and for the first time in 5 years, Leon let herself believe that tomorrow didn't have to include escape plans, that maybe, impossibly, she'd found a home. Winter settled over the Wyoming plains like a benediction, soft and white and clean. The ranch wore snow like a blanket, and for the first time since that terrible blizzard nearly a year ago, Leon didn't look at the white landscape with fear. Instead, she saw beauty. The way morning light caught on ice crystals, the peaceful silence of snowfall, the tracks animals left that told stories of survival and adaptation. She was learning to read this country, to understand its rhythms and moods. Learning that belonging meant more than just staying in one place. It meant letting that place change you. The new year arrived quiet and cold. They celebrated with a simple dinner, the three of them around the table that had become the center of their small world. Caleb told stories about his childhood in Texas, about winters that were mild compared to Wyoming's bite. Mei Lin talked about Guangzhou's rare cold snaps, how the whole city would slow down when temperatures dropped because no one had proper heating or warm clothes. Leon found herself talking about their mother without the usual bitterness, about the small room above the tea shop, the way their mother would sing while she worked, the rare moments of tenderness before hunger had turned everything desperate. "I think I understand her now," Leon said, surprising herself. "The choice she made, It wasn't cruel. It was just impossible. Most hard choices are, Caleb said quietly.
Maylin reached across the table, squeezed Leanne's hand. She did love us. In her own way. I know. And Leanne realized she did know, had maybe always known but needed time and distance to accept it. She just loved her own survival more. Can't really blame her for that. Yes, you can, Caleb said. Understanding doesn't mean forgiving. Both things can be true. Leanne considered that, nodded slowly.
Both things can be true. The conversation moved on to easier topics. Plans for spring breeding, which horses to keep and which to sell, whether they should expand the herd or focus on quality over quantity. Business talk that felt comfortable and real, the kind of planning that assumed a future worth preparing for. After dinner, Maylin excused herself early, claiming exhaustion, though her eyes held a secret kind of joy. Lynn and Caleb sat by the fire, the silence between them companionable now rather than awkward. She's pregnant, Leanne said. It wasn't a question. Caleb looked at her sharply. She told you? She doesn't have to. I can see it in her face, the way she moves, the way she glows from the inside out. Leanne smiled despite the complicated feelings churning in her chest. How long have you known? 2 weeks. We were waiting to tell you until we were certain. I'm happy for you both. And she was, truly. But also afraid, also uncertain about what this new change would mean for the fragile balance they'd achieved. Caleb seemed to read her thoughts. Nothing changes. You're still family, still part owner of this ranch, still home. Everything changes when a baby comes. Then we change with it. That's what families do. Leanne stared into the fire, watching flames consume wood and transform it into light and heat. Destruction and creation happening simultaneously, forever intertwined. I've been thinking about what comes next, she said. For me, I mean. I don't want to be the aunt who just helps raise someone else's child. I want my own purpose, my own direction. What are you thinking? There are more people like us out here, Chinese workers, immigrants, people without papers or protection. What we did, building legal standing, fighting back, it could help others. Caleb was quiet for a moment. You want to help them. I want to try. Maybe not harboring fugitives, that's too risky. But information, guidance, connections to lawyers and sympathetic officials. We know how to navigate the system now. We could teach others. That's dangerous work. So was running into a blizzard, so was standing up to Tucker. Leanne looked at him. I'm tired of just surviving. I want to do something that matters. It matters to me that you're here, to Mei Lin, to the baby that's coming. And I'll still be here. This is home now. You were right about that. But home can be a base instead of a prison, a place to return to instead of a place that holds you. Caleb studied her face, then nodded slowly. Your third of the ranch gives you independence to do as you choose. Use it however you think best. Just like that? Just like that. You've more than earned the right to make your own decisions. Leanne felt something unlock in her chest, permission she hadn't realized she'd been waiting for, though it came from herself more than from him. Thank you, she said, for everything, for saving us, for protecting us, for giving us the tools to protect ourselves. Thank you for letting me be part of something again, for reminding me that life doesn't end when people leave. He paused. Or die. They sat together until the fire burned low, two people who'd learned to build something new from the ashes of what they'd lost. Spring came sudden and fierce, the snow melting in great rushing streams that turned the plains into temporary rivers. The land transformed overnight from white to green, wildflowers erupting in riots of color. The horses grew restless with the changing season, eager for open pastures and long runs. Maylin's pregnancy became obvious as she began to show. She moved through the world with serene confidence, one hand often resting on her growing belly as if protecting the life within. Caleb watched her with such naked devotion that Leanne sometimes had to look away, the intimacy of it too much to witness. But mostly she was happy for them, happy that Mei Lin had found love that was gentle and real, happy that her sister would have the family they'd both dreamed of as children before the world had taught them that dreams were luxuries they couldn't afford. Doc Morrison visited regularly now, checking on Mei Lin's health and bringing news from Redemption Creek. The town was growing, he reported. More settlers arriving, more businesses opening, and word was spreading about the Hartley Ranch, the place where a white man had married a Chinese woman and fought the law to protect her. "You've become something of a legend," Doc Morrison said one afternoon over coffee. "People are talking about what you did, about standing up to Tucker and Wade." "Legends make us sound heroic," Leanne said dryly. "We were just trying not to die."
Sometimes that's the same thing, the doctor smiled. Either way, you've given hope to people who didn't have any. That matters. After he left, Leanne thought about his words. Hope was a dangerous thing to give people. It created expectations, obligations. But maybe that was the point. Maybe hope was meant to be dangerous, to push people toward actions they'd otherwise be too afraid to take. She began making trips to Redemption Creek and beyond, carefully at first, then with growing confidence. She sought out other Chinese immigrants, shared her story, offered guidance on navigating legal systems and building protection. She connected people with sympathetic lawyers, taught them about citizenship through marriage and property ownership, helped them understand that the law could be a weapon for them instead of against them. It was slow work, frustrating work. For every person she helped, 10 more remained trapped in exploitative contracts or dangerous situations. But slowly, incrementally, things began to change. A Chinese woman in the settlement filed papers to marry a shopkeeper, gained citizenship, and opened her own business. 2 men working at a nearby ranch negotiated better wages using legal advice Leanne provided. A family escaping a mining camp found refuge with a sympathetic rancher Leanne connected them to. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. By midsummer, Maylin was hugely pregnant and irritable in the heat. She complained constantly about her swollen feet, her aching back, her inability to sleep comfortably. But beneath the complaints was fierce joy, anticipation that made her eyes bright even when exhaustion pulled at her features. "I'm going to be terrible at this," she confessed to Leanne one evening, while they sat on the porch watching fireflies emerge. "I don't know anything about babies. Neither does Caleb." "That's not reassuring." "Then it's good there's 3 of us," Leanne said. "We'll figure it out together, like everything else." Maylin leaned her head on Leanne's shoulder, and for a moment they were just 2 sisters again, the way they'd been before the world had complicated everything. "I'm scared," Maylin whispered. "Our mother died giving birth to us. What if—" "Don't." Leanne wrapped an arm around her. "You're strong, healthy. Doc Morrison's the best physician in 3 territories, and I'll be right there with you the whole time. Promise?" "Promise." The baby came in late August during a thunderstorm that shook the cabin's walls. Maylin's labor lasted 18 hours, long and hard and frightening in moments when the pain seemed too much to bear. Leanne stayed by her sister's side, holding her hand, whispering encouragement in Cantonese, wiping sweat from her forehead. Caleb paced the cabin like a caged wolf until Doc Morrison ordered him outside. "You're making everyone nervous," the doctor said. "Go check on the horses or something useful." At dawn, when the storm finally broke and sunlight streamed through the windows, a baby's cry filled the cabin. "It's a girl," Doc Morrison announced, placing the tiny, squalling infant on Maylin's chest. "Small but healthy. Good lungs on her." Maylin was crying and laughing simultaneously, her hands trembling as she touched her daughter's face. "She's perfect. Leanne, look. She's perfect." Leanne looked and felt her heart break open in ways she hadn't known possible. The baby was impossibly tiny, red-faced and furious at being born, with a thick cap of dark hair and eyes that would probably be brown like her mother's. "What will you name her?" Leanne asked. Maylin looked at Caleb, who'd rushed back in the moment he heard the baby's cry. They had a silent conversation, the kind married people developed over time. "Emma," Maylin said finally, "for the daughter Caleb lost. And Lynn for our mother. Emma Lynn Hartley." Caleb's eyes filled with tears. He knelt beside the bed, gathered his wife and new daughter close, and Leanne saw him transformed. The lonely, broken man who'd saved them from the snow was gone, replaced by someone whole and hoping. She slipped out quietly to give them privacy, found Doc Morrison packing his medical bag. "They're going to be fine," he said, reading her concerned expression. "Mother and baby both healthy. You did good work in there." "I didn't do anything except hold her hand. Sometimes that's the most important thing." He paused at the door. "You know, when Caleb first brought you 2 here, half the town thought he'd lost his mind.
Chinese women, legal complications, all that trouble.
But look what he's built.
A family. Hope. Something worth protecting. After he left, Lian walked out to watch the sunrise. The storm had washed everything clean, and the plains stretched green and gold to the horizon. The horses grazed peacefully in the pasture. Smoke rose from the cabin's chimney. Everything looked exactly as it had yesterday, yet somehow completely transformed. A baby's cry drifted from the cabin, followed by Mei Lin's gentle laughter, and Caleb's deeper voice murmuring something Lian couldn't make out. She thought about their mother, wondered if she'd held them like Mei Lin was holding Emma now, wondered if she'd felt this same overwhelming love before desperation had forced her to make impossible choices. Maybe understanding really could exist alongside grief. Maybe both things could be true at once. The weeks after Emma's birth passed in a blur of sleeplessness and wonder. The baby demanded constant attention, feeding every few hours, crying at unpredictable intervals, requiring changes and soothing and vigilant watching. Lian discovered skills she hadn't known she possessed, learned to read Emma's different cries, to swaddle her tight, to rock her with just the right rhythm to bring sleep. Caleb was besotted. He held his daughter like she was made of glass and magic, talked to her constantly in a soft voice Lian had never heard him use before. At night, when Emma fussed, he'd walk the cabin floor for hours singing old cowboy songs until she settled. "You're going to spoil her," Mei Lin said affectionately, watching him cradle the sleeping infant. "That's my right as a father," Caleb replied. "To spoil my daughter rotten." "Both your daughters," Mei Lin corrected gently. She'd taken to calling Lian that too, daughter of the ranch, sister by marriage if not blood, family in all the ways that mattered. Lian didn't correct her. Fall arrived with its usual splendor, the plains turning gold and amber. The ranch had prospered over the summer. They'd sold 12 horses at good prices and had orders for 6 more. The money went into improving the property, expanding the barn, and setting aside funds for Emma's future. One evening in October, Lian rode back from Redemption Creek to find visitors in the yard, not lawmen this time, but a Chinese couple with 2 small children, their wagon loaded with all their possessions. Caleb was already talking to them when Lian dismounted. He looked up as she approached. "Lian, this is the Chen family. They heard about us in the settlement, about what we did with Tucker and the warrants. They're looking for help." The woman, Mrs. Chen, stepped forward nervously. "We worked at a farm near the border. The owner died, and his son wants to sell us with the property like we're equipment. We ran. We don't know where to go." Lian looked at the family, exhausted, desperate, at the end of their resources. Looked at Caleb, saw the question in his eyes. A year ago, he'd sent Zhang Wei away, and the young man had died. That decision had haunted him, changed something fundamental about how he measured risk and responsibility. "How many people are chasing you?" Lian asked. "Just the son right now, but he'll get the law involved soon." "Do you have any legal documentation, contracts, papers, anything?" Mr. Chen produced a worn document. Lian read it carefully, her English now fluent enough to parse legal language. "This contract expired 6 months ago," she said. "You're not his property. You never were. This was just a labor agreement, and it's finished." He said we owe him for housing and food. Not according to this contract. He was legally required to provide both as part of your wages. Lian looked at Caleb. "We need to get them to a lawyer. File documentation that they're free workers seeking legal employment." "There's a lawyer in the settlement now," Caleb said. "Started practice last month. He's young, but honest." "Then we go tomorrow. Tonight the Chens stay here." Lian turned to the family. "You'll be safe. We'll help you fight this properly." Mrs. Chen's eyes filled with tears. "Why? Why would you help strangers?" "Because someone helped us once," Mei Lin said from the cabin doorway, Emma in her arms. "And because that's what family does. We take care of our own." Over the next weeks, Lian worked with the new lawyer to establish the Chen family's legal freedom. The farm owner's son tried to file charges, but the expired contract and documented evidence made his case impossible. The Chens found work at a ranch north of Redemption Creek, legitimate employment with legal protections. It was the first real victory in Lian's growing mission, but not the last. Word spread. Other families began seeking them out, looking for guidance and protection. Lian couldn't help everyone. Some situations were too complicated, too dangerous, too far beyond her ability to influence. But she helped who she could, built a network of sympathetic lawyers and officials, created resources that hadn't existed before. The ranch became known as a safe place, a beacon for those who had nowhere else to turn. Caleb never complained about the extra work, the added risk. He'd made his choice the day he saved 2 dying women from a blizzard, and he stood by it with quiet determination. By the time Emma turned 6 months old, a chubby, happy baby who smiled at everyone, the ranch had helped 14 families navigate legal challenges and find safe employment. It wasn't enough, would never be enough while injustice existed. But it was something. Winter returned, softer this time. The snow fell gentle, and Emma experienced her first white world with wide-eyed wonder. Caleb built a larger crib to accommodate her growing size. Maylin sewed tiny clothes and sang lullabies in Cantonese. Leon taught the baby to recognize horse sounds, held her up to windows to watch the animals move through snow. On Christmas Eve, the 3 adults sat around the fire after Emma had been put to bed. They'd developed a tradition of exchanging small gifts, tokens more meaningful than expensive. Maylin gave Caleb a new shirt she'd sewn herself, the stitching perfect. He gave her a locket with space for a photograph of Emma. Leon gave them both hand-drawn maps of the ranch with proposed expansions marked, new pastures, additional corrals, space for growth. "What about you?" Maylin asked. "What do you want?" Leon thought about it. A year ago, she would have said freedom, escape, the ability to run. Now those things felt empty. "This," she said finally. "What we've built, what we're building, that's enough." But Caleb had one more gift. He pulled out legal documents, pushed them across to Leon. "What is this?" she asked. "Incorporation papers for the ranch. Makes it a legal business entity with 3 equal partners. More protection, more legitimacy. But also this." He pulled out another document. "A fund. 1/3 of all ranch profits set aside specifically for helping immigrant families with legal fees, relocation costs, whatever they need. Your project, officially supported and funded." Leon stared at the papers, couldn't find words. "You were right," Caleb continued, "about wanting to help others, about using what we learned to make things better. This makes it official, makes it sustainable." "You're giving away 1/3 of the profits." "We're investing it," Maylin corrected gently, "in the kind of world we want Emma to grow up in, one where people help each other instead of exploiting each other." Leon felt tears burning her eyes. "Thank you," she managed, "both of you, for understanding, for supporting this." "We're family," Caleb said simply. "That's what family does." Later that night, after the gifts had been put away and the fire burned low, Leon stood outside looking at the stars. The same stars that had watched her nearly die in a blizzard, that had witnessed her running from slavery, that had seen her transform from fugitive to citizen to something more. The cabin door opened and Maylin joined her, wrapped in a heavy shawl. "Can't sleep?" Maylin asked. "Just thinking. About how far we've come. About that night in the snow when we thought we were dying." "I think about that sometimes too," Maylin said. "How close we came to never having any of this. Do you ever regret it, marrying Caleb, staying here instead of running to California or somewhere else?" "Never." Maylin's answer was immediate and certain. "This is exactly where I'm meant to be." "What about you? Do you regret staying?" Leon considered the question honestly. "No, I thought I would. Thought I'd always feel trapped or jealous or like the extra person, but this place, this work, this family, it fits. I fit." "You do," Maylin agreed, "better than you probably realize." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching their breath mist in the cold air. From inside came a small cry, Emma waking, probably hungry. Maylin turned to go, then paused. "Do you think our mother would be proud?" she asked, "if she could see us now?" Leon thought about the woman who'd sold them, the desperate choice that had led to 5 years of hell, and eventually to this moment of peace. "I think she'd be relieved," Leon said finally, "relieved that her impossible choice didn't destroy us, that we survived and found something better than survival. I hope she knows somehow that we're okay. Maybe she does." Maylin went inside to tend to Emma. Leanne stayed a moment longer, looking out at the land they'd built a life on. The horses in their warm barn, The cabin with its glowing windows, the vast Wyoming sky overhead. She thought about the promise she and Mei Lin had made as children, always together. They'd kept it, but its meaning had expanded to include Caleb, Emma, all the families they'd helped and would help. Together had become bigger than just two sisters clinging to each other against the world. It had become a choice to build something lasting. Spring came again, as it always did. The snow melted, the grass grew green, the horses foaled. Emma took her first steps in the muddy yard, laughing when she fell and immediately trying again. The ranch expanded, the work multiplied, the network of people they helped grew larger. Doc Morrison visited one April afternoon with news. Marshal Wade retired, he said, moved back east.
Rumor is the federal investigation into his dealings with Tucker convinced him law enforcement wasn't his calling anymore.
And Tucker? Caleb asked. Lost the railroad contract. Last I heard, he was working as a common laborer in Kansas, the kind of job he used to supervise. Doc Morrison smiled. Funny how these things work out sometimes. After he left, Leanne realized she felt nothing about Tucker's downfall. No satisfaction, no vindication, just indifference. He'd been an obstacle they'd overcome, and now he was irrelevant. They'd moved beyond him to something better. That evening, Leanne sat on the porch with Emma on her lap. The baby was babbling nonsense, reaching for fireflies that danced just out of reach. Inside, Caleb and Mei Lin were preparing dinner, their voices drifting out warm and familiar. "You see those lights, little one?" Leanne said in Cantonese. "That's hope. It flickers and dances and sometimes disappears, but it always comes back." Emma gurgled and reached again, her tiny fingers opening and closing. "Your mama and I, we chased hope across an ocean and almost died for it. But we caught it. We held on until it became real." The baby looked up at her with serious eyes, as if she understood. "And now you get to grow up with it," Leanne continued. "You get to live in a world where Chinese girls can own property and marry who they choose and build something that matters. You get to be free in ways your grandmother never imagined." She kissed Emma's dark hair, breathed in the sweet baby smell, and felt gratitude so profound it hurt. "Dinner's ready," Mei Lin called from inside. Leanne carried Emma into the table where her family waited. They ate together as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Outside, the horses settled for the night. The land stretched peaceful and green to the horizon. And in that moment, everything they'd endured, the storm, the fear, the running, the fighting, all of it crystallized into perfect clarity. They hadn't just survived, they'd won. Not the way stories usually won, with dramatic confrontations and clear villains defeated, but in the quieter, more profound way that actually mattered. They'd built a home where none should have existed, created family from strangers, found safety in a world designed to deny it to them. They'd taken the worst the frontier could throw at them and forged it into something beautiful. That night, after Emma was asleep and the dishes cleaned, the three of them sat around the table with the ranch's account book spread before them. They reviewed numbers, made plans for the coming year, discussed which families needed help and how to provide it. "We should build a second cabin," Caleb suggested, "for families passing through. Give them a safe place to stay while their legal situations get sorted." "We'd need to hire help," Mei Lin added. "The ranch is getting too big for 3 people to manage alone." "There's a young couple in the settlement," Leanne said, "Chinese and Irish, looking for honest work. I could talk to them." They worked late into the night, planning and dreaming and building toward a future none of them had imagined possible a year ago. When they finally headed to bed, exhausted but satisfied, Lion paused at her door. "Thank you," she said to both of them, "for giving me a reason to stop running." "Thank you for staying," Caleb replied, "for teaching us that family is something you choose." In her bed, Leanne lay listening to the night sounds of the ranch, horses shifting in the barn, wind moving through grass, Emma's soft breathing from across the room, all the sounds of home. She thought about the girl she'd been in Guangzhou, the teenager who'd been sold and shipped across an ocean. Thought about the woman she'd become through 5 years of American brutality. And finally about who she was now, not just a survivor, but someone who helped others survive. The journey from there to here had been brutal and unfair and longer than it should have been. But she'd made it. They'd made it. And tomorrow they'd wake up and continue building the kind of world where no one had to run into blizzards to be free, where Chinese twins could own a Wyoming ranch and help other immigrants fight for dignity, where a lonely cowboy could find family in the most unlikely places, where hope wasn't just something you chased, but something you created with your own hands. Outside, the first stars emerged in the darkening sky. The same stars that had watched them nearly die now watched them thrive. And if those stars could speak, they might have said what Leon finally understood in her bones. Home wasn't where you came from. It was what you built when you stopped running long enough to lay down roots. It was choosing each other day after day through storms, both literal and metaphorical. It was standing together against a world that said you didn't belong and proving it wrong through sheer stubborn persistence. It was this ranch, these people, this life they'd fought so hard to claim. And it was enough, more than enough. It was everything.